Shalom Israel first. When you all praise and glory honor to Yahweh by Shem Yahushua by Shem Kakadash. I want to see Apostle Ezra Millstone. Peace and salutations to 1/3 of Israel. Salak. Want to title it "Who Maketh the Clouds His Chariot." All right, and me and the bro we were driving to camp, and saw this right here. Like a chariot, over the mountain, which thought that was pretty spiritual, you know. But this is spiritual too because I'm looking for a video topic, and Psalm of the day. The scripture is I believe it's the 40th verse. All right, and then I went over here, and then the third verse caught my attention. All right, and then thought back about the picture. But this is Psalms 104, and I'll start at 1. It says, "Bless the Lord Yahweh, O my soul, O Lord Yahweh, my power. Thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty. Who coverest thyself with a light as with a garment, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the water, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire, who laid the foundations of the earth that it should not be removed forever." All right, and that that right there goes to prove to you that the fifth verse, the world is not gonna be destroyed. It's only talking about it's only talking about Babylon that's gonna be destroyed. Babylon and Israel, but that's not the topic today. The third verse is what the point. It says, "Who laid the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot." All right, and you see it right here, a cloud. All right, and the chariots be cloaking themselves in the clouds. All right, because that's the technology of the Lord. People think, oh, that's far out, but the funny thing is that the technology Esau has now, that people think is so extravagant and out of this world. Well, not out of this world, but on a whole nother level. The Lord basically allowed him to gain that knowledge and understanding to attain that. Because for example, the missiles, waster right here. So Isaiah 54:16 is to behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. I have created the waster to destroy. All right. So the Lord, he created the waster to destroy. Basically, he's the one who was working on the minds of these scientists, to create the missile. To create the missile. Create these weapons. All right, because how do you create, like, this is not just knowledge you just wake up one day and it's like, oh yeah, I know how to do it. It's like, no, like this, you have to be divinely inspired to do this. And the Lord, he tapped on the mind of Esau, really these Temanites, because you watch that movie Oppenheimer, and it shows you the basically like the creation of the missile, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I've watched it, but I've heard it. Well, let me just look it up. All right, time. Oppenheimer. Movie explained. Oppenheimer is a biographical thriller that follows J. Robert Oppenheimer's role in the development of the atomic bomb during the Manhattan Project and the subsequent political and personal fallout. All right, so basically, there's this nigga create the development of the atomic bomb, and through that, it's advanced, of course, to what what's about to be shot off now, the ICBMs, all right. And why is that? Because it's prophecy at the end of the day. The Lord's words don't go out void. So the Lord said, how do you think this is, why do you think this is written? It's Isaiah 9. There you go, Isaiah 9:5. It says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." All right. And what is that? The nuclear missiles. All right. That's going to be World War III. All right. And, How was Malachi 4:1? The day of the Lord shall burn as an oven. So the 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, if I'm not mistaken, talks about elements shall melt with fervent heat. Yeah, 2 Peter 3:10. All right, it says, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. All right, so how's that gonna happen? Through the ICBMs. All right, and spiritual, because how is the Lord gonna deliver His elect from the destruction? Through the chariots. All right. And chariots come in multiple forms. They can come in. They can come looking like rolls. They can come looking like a wheel inside a wheel, as it says in let's get that Ezekiel 1 and 16. It's talking about the chariot. It says the appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of a beryl, and they four had one likeness, and their appearance and the work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. When they went upon their four sides, and they turned not when they went. All right, so basically, they turn out where they went is, they have the capabilities of stopping on a dime, and going back. They beat the law. They don't go by the laws of physics. Where Esau's jets. Esau, you got to take a white ass turn, fucking just to turn back around. No, like the chariots, they could stop. They can go like 1,000 miles per hour. Just to give an example. Stop on a dime. Just drop, and then go up. Like these, you try doing that now. You gonna get sick. You gonna pass out. Shit. There's even videos of pilots and whatnot. That get trained in the jets and whatnot. And their face, they can't handle it. Your body can't handle it. That's why the Lord has to change us, in the kingdom, or obviously, when he comes back, to redeem His elect, Lord willing, that's us, But we got to be changed, all right? Because these bodies is mortal. What's that? This incorruption. Let me just get this like. Let's see. Had a brain fart. But it's 1 Corinthians 15. Let's get that. 1 Corinthians 15 and 53. There you go. Oh, no, it's like, let me start at 50 or 49. It says 1 Corinthians 15 and 49 says, and as we have borne the image of the earthy, so we shall also bear the image of the heavenly. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of the Most High, neither does corruption inherit incorruption. All right. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. All right, some new bodies. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. All right, and that's gonna happen. As when the missiles is coming down, the elect are going up. All right, and Lord willing, that's us, and it's gonna be by way of chariots. All right, because why else? The scripture talk about the strangeness of His salvation. All right, first or Wisdom of Solomon 5 and 1. It says, "Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him and made no account of his labors. When they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear, and shall be amazed at the strangeness of His salvation, so far beyond all they look for." All right, let's look at that word strangeness. It's a little strange. It says, from elsewhere, foreign, unknown, unfamiliar, not belonging to the place where found. All right. Foreign, external. All right. This is going to be a foreign. And what's the foreign? What's the foreign aspect? It's chariots, coming back from, the heavenly realm. It's really going to be Yahweh's chariot. That's going to beam up the elect. All right, what's that? Matthew 24 and 31. But let me just get that right now. But the foreign, that's the chariots coming down. The vehicles of the Lord to beam up the elect. All right. That's why it's let me get this right quick. Matthew 20:24. Salakia. I thought I heard doors opening. Slack. Matthew 24:31, and he shall send his angels with the sound of a great trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds from one end of heaven to the other. All right. So that's gonna happen. Well, let me read up. Matthew 24:29 says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. Well, the clouds, we talk about as chariots, as scripture said, of heaven with power and great glory. All right. And let me keep reading. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. All right, so the Lord, he's coming back with chariots. All right, chariots are so-called UFOs. All right, one more scripture, Revelation 1:7. It says, Revelation 1:7, behold, he cometh with clouds, the chariots, as we read in Psalms 105:3, he maketh the clouds his chariots. It says, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindred of the earth shall wail because of him, even so, amen. All right, and prove what, the chariots are. Let's go to 1 Kings 2. I think it's 12. No, it's 2. 1 Kings 2. No, that's not. Is it 2 Kings? Yeah, 2 Kings 2. There you go. 2 Kings 2:1. It says, and it came to pass when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, that's another name for a chariot, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal, and Elijah said, oh, so let me just skip down to the 12th verse. There you go. All right, this is 2 Kings 2, and start at 11. It says, and it came to pass as they went on, as they still went on, it's talking about Elijah and Elisha, and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. All right. It says, then Elisha saw, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more, and he took hold of his own clothes and rent them in two pieces. All right, so that right there was an abduction. All right, so-called UFO abduction. As they say, alien abduction. Well, that's what the elect, Lord willing, that's us. That's how we gonna get beamed up out of the destruction. By the chariots. The Lord gonna come back in that fathership, and he gonna beam up his elect. All right, and that's gonna be the strangeness of his salvation. All right, and because we talked about we talked about the fire. How you gonna be delivered from the fire? If America, Babylon the Great, is gonna be destroyed, by thermonuclear destruction, how are you possibly gonna leave? Not scripture, but they say it takes like 13 minutes for a missile to hit like New York or something like that from Russia. So where are you going in 13 minutes? You have no other choice but the Lord. That's the only salvation. That's the only way. That's the only deliverance is the Lord. All right. Let's get see. All right, this is Revelation 15 and 1. It says, and I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of the Most High. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, staying on the sea of glass, having the harps of the Most High. That sea of glass is the chariots. The chariot. That's the elect looking down at the destruction of this place, Babylon the Great. All right, when it's on fire, you know. And I want to look at that word "see" right quick. See. Okay, I don't think they had it. All right. Well, it's talking. They're trying to refer to an actual sea when it's not a sea. You know, it's that's see that's gonna be the view from the chariot and looking down at the destruction of this place, Babylon the Great. All right, and the precept to back that up is this one right here. What is it? Notion, Isaiah. Hide thyself. There you go. Isaiah 26 and 20. It says, "Come, my people, enter thou, Salakia. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment until the indignation be overpassed." It's talking about the missiles, or that's talking about, the elect being beamed up in the chariot, you know, and basically being preserved from the nuclear destruction. All right. It says, "For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain." All right, let's see what I wrote. Yeah, Yahweh shall come to judge. All right. So the only way to, to be delivered out of the upcoming destruction, the ICBMs, is to enter into that ship. You know, that's what we need. That's salvation. Salvation is being delivered from danger. All right, and we come into some dangerous times. All right, and precept that comes to mind is Job 5 and Job 5 and 19. Or yeah, I'll read this and go to Psalm 91. Job 5 and 19. It says, "He shall deliver thee in 6 troubles, yea, in 7 there shall no evil touch thee." All right. All right, and what's that 7 destruction? That's ultimately the missiles. To top it off, because 7 represents completion, and what's gonna complete this place, Babylon, is it's the missiles. As well as the fire from the chariots that the Lord's gonna bring. All right, but let's go to Psalm 91, and I'll probably end it off. But Psalm 91 and I'll start at 1. It says, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." All right, secret place of the Most High is His truth. All right, and that's why Yahweh Shai said what He said in Revelation 2 and 26. That which, or I think it's 24 5, says, "That which ye have already hold fast till I come." All right, so that's the truth. That's His truth. We're gonna need Yahweh by Shemi outside. There's no other way. It says, "I will say of the Lord Yahweh, by Shemi outside, He is my refuge and my fortress, my power, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence." And what's the noisome pestilence? It's gonna be the missiles. All right. "He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler." All right. Yeah, Khan. So it says, "He shall cover thee with His feathers." Okay, yeah. "Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that fly by day." What's that arrow? The missiles. I hate. It's a lot. It says, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shall thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. And that's gonna be literal. All right, that's literal. All right, and that's gonna be that's Lord willing. It's gonna be us looking down from the chariot, seeing the destruction of this place. You know, our enemies being destroyed in Babylon. You know, and that's gonna be by the way of the chariots. All right, I believe there's a scripture in Baruch. All right. I think it's there you go. Baruch 4 and I'll start at 23. It says, for I sent you out with mourning and weeping, but the Most High will give you to me again with joy and gladness forever. And how will, we got basically deported from our land. The Lord deported us from the nation, from the land of Israel. That's why you got them gutter rats over there right now, devouring our land. All right. But it says, like as now the neighbors of Zion have seen your captivity, these heathens, so shall they see shortly your salvation from my power, which shall come upon you with great glory and brightness of the everlasting. That glory is going to be through the chariots, bro. That's going to be what's going, that's going to basically magnify Yahweh Bashmi outside. Everyone's going to know that, these are the vehicles of the Lord. This is of Yahweh Bashmi outside. Because this is second Exodus. All right. And let's go to Jeremiah 23. Jeremiah 23 and sorry, 7. It says, therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that they shall no more say, the Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but the Lord Yahweh by Shemel liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country, here in Babylon, and from all the countries where I have driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land. So that's the salvation. That's the Exodus, part 2. All right, but this is going to be greater than the ancient Egypt. All right, and it's all going to be for the glory of Yahweh by Shemel outside. All right, but let me go back. It says I'll reread the 24th verse. It says, like as now the neighbors of Zion have seen your captivity, so shall they see shortly your salvation from our power, which shall come upon you, great glory and brightness of the everlasting. All right. So, the chariots of the Lord are the vehicles in which, on which the Lord is coming back on, that fathership. And he's coming to bring deliverance, salvation to his elect through the way of the chariots. All right. AKA the clouds, So hopefully, this is well said and edifying. This is all through the Spirit. I don't really gotta say too much, but hopefully it's well said and edifying. Again, want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh by Hashem outside, by Hashem Kakodesh. Till next time, so.